friends are since.
Recently, I've had some questions about what gear I use to make my YouTube videos, and this is something that I kind of had to figure out through a process of trial and error. So I thought I would put together a video explaining what gear I use now, but also more generally, just give some tips about the key kind of features that I think are worth looking out for if you're just starting making videos for yourself. The first thing I want to really stress at the outset though is that you don't need a particular camera or a particular microphone or a big fancy lighting rig or anything like that in order to start making videos. The most important thing is that people can hear you, people can see you, and that you just start making videos, because ultimately people will forgive a whole variety of quality issues so long as they're interested in what you have to say. Now, to illustrate this point, when I first started making videos, I was using this thing, which is a Polaroid Cube, and as you can probably tell, it's not the most advanced video camera in the world, but what was great about this is that it was so small that I could take it anywhere and really very easily and quickly start making things, and the rest kind of follows on from that critical point. So bear in mind that kind of perspective as I'm going through the rest of this, because I don't want you to think there's a shopping list of things you have to buy before making stuff, because there isn't. Now, with that said, the first thing you're going to have to consider if you want to start making videos is the kind of camera that you're going to use. And you don't need a particular brand or type of camera, but there are some kinds of features in there that I think are really helpful for, just starting out making videos, or even, making videos down the line a year or two. And when I upgraded my Polaroid Cube, I got one of these, which I'm sure you'll be familiar with. This is a GoPro, specifically this is a GoPro Hero 9, and there are a bunch of features of the GoPro Hero 9 and 10 or whatever, GoPro you get, which I think apply to every kind of camera, at least they're the most kind of useful features that I think you should keep an eye out for. The first thing is the inclusion of a front-facing screen. The front-facing screen is useful for a variety of reasons, not least because you can tell if you're actually recording or not, but also because it helps you kind of frame yourself and know where everything is. The second thing is that with a media mod for the GoPro, you can connect up an external microphone, and that is especially important as you go further down the line, because it means you can get better audio quality than the built-in microphone from whatever camera you're using. The third thing is that this camera and a whole host of newer video cameras allow you to record in bursts that are longer than 25 minutes. And the reason I'm highlighting this specifically is because some of the older cameras, especially cameras that were more designed as still cameras or kind of hybrid cameras, didn't allow you to record past 20 or 25 minutes. And this was some kind of quirk of tax law, I believe. However, modern cameras like the Sony ZV-E10, which I've done a video on and you can go watch if you're interested in that specifically, they allow you to record in durations that are longer than 25 minutes uninterrupted. So you don't have to keep checking your watch all the time and get thrown off your kind of flow because your camera can only do 25 minutes. And that was actually one of the key things for me. Now, the next feature that's really important, I think, but maybe less important, is the ability to shoot with frame rates higher than the kind of standard 25 to 30. And the reason this is important is because if you want that kind of nice, smooth B-roll type look, then you want to shoot with a higher frame rate, and then in your video editing software, you can slow everything right down and it'll look gloriously smooth and not jumpy and janky and all the rest of it. Now, you may have heard me mention the Sony ZV-E10 a minute ago, and that is what I'm shooting this video on. And the reason I ended up getting this over and above the GoPro is the ability to use different lenses, or at least shoot with lenses that look a bit nicer than the GoPro's stock kind of fixed lens. And the reason I got this Sony ZV-E10 in particular on that front is because I wanted to do kind of close-ups, I wanted to kind of move around and get wider angles and things. And so if you want to shoot in a variety of different conditions like that, it might be worth considering a camera like the ZV-E10, which allows you to take off the lens and use different ones, and just generally autofocus in a much more pleasant way. Now, the next thing you have to consider is your voice, or at least the microphone you're going to use in order to record audio, because obviously that's quite important. Now, a lot of cameras that shoot video, or I guess most of them, will also have a built-in microphone, and I'm sure for a lot of purposes that'll do just fine. However, if you do have a camera that's got a microphone input, then this means you can then look at different external microphones, which will drastically improve the audio quality of your videos. Now there's a whole pile of different kinds of external microphones you can get. You get some nice shotgun microphones from companies like Rode, and that's the sort of big mic that sits on top of your camera. However, you can also use lavalier microphones which clip on to your t-shirt or whatever it might be. But the microphone that I have come across, which is undoubtedly the best from my perspective, is the Rode Wireless Go 2. Now this is basically a clip-on microphone. You might be able to see it in here. It's tucked inside my t-shirt, but you get a transmitter unit and you get a receiver unit. The receiver unit sits on top of your camera, it plugs into the microphone input, and then this thing here is a wee wireless microphone that then transmits the audio back to the receiver unit. And the reason this is so good is that I can move around, I can be playing about with my synthesizers, I can do whatever I need to do, and I don't have to worry about being caught up in cables. But it also has the benefit of being a close mic, so it's able to get your voice much more than something like a shotgun mic will, and it also rejects a lot of the sound from the room, which is fantastic. The other good thing about the Rode mic is that this comes in a package of either 1 or 2, and if you get 2 microphones, then you're able to hook on a second mic up to somebody else, whether you're doing an interview or something like that, and it splits the audio into the left and right channels, so you can mix it independently later on. And honestly, if I could have gone back in time and just bought this thing right at the start of when I was making videos, it would have saved me so much hassle. So have a look specifically at the Rode Wireless 2, because I think it's definitely the best mic I have found for this kind of thing. Now, if you want to record any audio outside of just your voice, then you might need to consider an external audio recorder, and there are loads of different ones available. Most people are using some kind of Zoom recorder, and they've got a whole variety of different models available, including this thing, which is the H1. This is a pretty ancient recorder at this point, and you can pick them up for like 30 quid second hand. But if you need to record more instruments, or you need to record multiple audio sources, there are also more expensive ones. The one that I use in particular is this. This is the Zoom H5. It's got 4 separate inputs, 2 of which have got jack or XLR inputs on the bottom, and 2 are on a stereo kind of mini jack at the top here. The nice thing about this one, and the reason I picked it, is because not only does it provide phantom power on these inputs, but also you can split out each individual input. So it's not just stereo pairs, and not all of them do that, so keep an eye out if that's something you're interested in. Now, when it comes to lighting, you don't need some big fancy video lighting rig, as I said earlier, but I would recommend that you get some kind of light, because you can pick up these wee LED panels for really quite cheap, and having just that wee bit of fill light can really make a big difference to your video quality. This particular thing here I've got is a generic kind of LED video panel, and you can get these from anything for like £15 up to hundreds of pounds. But honestly, you don't need to spend hundreds of pounds. Get one of the cheaper ones, stick it in a wee stand, put it on one of the lowest settings, and then it'll give you some nice separation between you and your background, or even just to light up whatever you're recording at the time. Now, on that point, I'm going to come to the final thing that I think is worth considering in terms of gear that you might need to make videos, and that is the kind of stand or tripod that you might want to hold your LED panel or your camera. And this is one area that I think is probably worth doing a wee bit of research into and spending maybe a wee bit more money than you might be inclined to, because if you've ever been a singer, you know how awful it is when you get a cheap mic stand and it doesn't stay where you want it to, and it kind of falls apart and sinks and isn't stable. And that's the kind of worst case scenario if you're trying to record a video, because things end up shaking and it just looks awful generally. So do look into getting a semi-decent stand that will be rock solid. I personally am actually not taking my own advice on this, and I do need to upgrade my stands, because I'm using some old mic stands for my lighting. I'm also using a big old lighting stand and a kind of heavier right angle stand tripod thing for my camera, which isn't ideal. So if you are looking into making videos, particularly kind of videos where you're doing product shots or anything like that, then yeah, it is worth getting a better stand. In terms of video processing software, I use Final Cut Pro. There's no real specific reason to that, other than that's just what I've always used. There are free versions of video processing software that you can produce perfectly good videos with. You don't need to use something like Premiere or Final Cut Pro in order to achieve good results. However, the one reason that I do kind of like Final Cut Pro is the approach to licensing. Specifically, it's not a subscription-based model, so you don't need to pay every month for it. You pay once once and you get it forever. So that is something to consider. Hopefully all of that information is useful in some kind of way. You can ask any questions about that below. I think all of this is a kind of evolving process, so if you've got any of your own tips for this stuff, you can tell me how I can improve my own videos, because obviously, you know, I need some kind of reflector to keep the shadows out of my eyes or something like that. Anyway, for now, thanks for watching, goodbye.